One again. Let me start over because I didn't put my microphone on. Thank you. Kanownik, Digital Association, Digital Poland Association, excuse me, who is our host today. From Romania, Alexandra Tamas, from Employers Association of the Software and Services Industry in Romania, ANIS. From Slovakia, Mr. Michal Kardos, from SAPIE, Slovak Alliance for Innovation Economy. And finally, I want to introduce our special guests from Belarus, Ms. Anna Pobol from Infopark. Now I want to give the floor to Mr. Michał Kanownik, our host today, who will give a welcome speech titled, Why do we need industry-wide cooperation in the CEE? Michał, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. One moment, I will be on. You can see me right now. Great, thank you very much. One more time, welcome in Poland. Frankly speaking, when we met online beginning of August, I really thought that today we'll meet all in Warsaw, but live. Unfortunately, COVID and pandemic changed our plans, and because of this, we had to meet today only in hybrid way. But I hope that next meeting of our coalition will be for sure live. Why we decided to propose our friends from CEE countries created a coalition for our industry in our region. Today, during a pandemic, we all noticed that digital industry, ICT sector, digital technology let us to be in contact in business, in good relations with our families, friends, with our administration by whole time of pandemia. And that's why, in our opinion, in our common opinion, we have to take care that our digital economy, digital administration, digital business in our region will be in good health, I can say, for the future, and will be able to create in our region a real future digital European economy. That's why we today would like to present the Warsaw Digital Declaration. And please let me say a few words why and what is inside this our digital declaration. So Warsaw Digital Declaration specifies the most important issues and demands regarding the digital economy of the three Cs countries. We want to show that as industry of CEE countries, we have convergent interests such as building a digital infrastructure and research and development potential in our region as a technical and scientific base, where innovative ideas, the field of, for example, AI and robotics, can be created and then be used around the world. It's a common initiative of digital and new technology industry organizations from 11 countries of CEE: Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Thank you very much, all of you, that you agreed about this declaration and about our cooperation, which is not only on the paper, because we prepared one common opinion to the first European regulation to Digital Service Act. This is the beginning of establishing the Industry Digital Coalition of CEE countries, the CEE Digital Coalition. It will be our think tank, which will be an advisory base for the governments of our countries in creating regulations and digital issues and strengthen the voice of our sector on the forum of the entire EU. Main points of our declaration. First, digital competence. Universal digitalization is changing the job market. Some tasks are carried out by automated machines, while employees have to acquire new skills better suited to the changing enterprises. It's important to create educational programs enabling those who are employed in the CEE to adapt the dynamic reality. Number two, investing in advanced technologies. It's necessary today to invest in technological solutions, boosting innovativeness such as artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. We call on our governments to increase the share of resources from national budgets spent in these areas, both building and supporting R&D and creating applications. Number three, access to the Internet and digital services as a basic right of every citizen in CEE countries. To provide every household with at least broadband access to the Internet by 2025 is a common challenge ahead of our countries. Number four, data management. Our economies need a modern approach to data processing. This is particularly important for the development and innovative services. It's necessary to maintain the free flow of data both in the public and private sector. Number five, cybersecurity. As an awareness of cyber threats grows among the consumers and businesses, so will the demand for cybersecurity services. CEE has the facilities and the technology enabling companies that are run by experts in our countries to provide such services. Our countries should support development of domestic cybersecurity sectors. Number six, supporting and developing startups. We need to stimulate the creativity of young entrepreneurs in our region and make it easier for them to carry out innovative projects. We should create government programs that not only support the development of startups, but above all, help them commercialize their business models. Number seven, uniform and clear regulatory environment. Legal regulations of individual countries cannot result in blocking the development of digital innovations. We should seek to create smart solutions in law and to harmonize them for CEE countries. This will enable and help the companies from our countries to scale their businesses across the CEE market. And final, number eight, fifth generation mobile network. The fifth generation wireless technology will allow companies, including startups, to create new innovative products and services. The CEE region must be a true leader in that regard. The countries of our region should aim to adopt legal solutions that will facilitate the development of 5G-based business. That's eight main points of our declaration. Of course, this declaration is open for new partners, new NTAs from our region. I hope that through next months, we will have a lot of new partners signing this declaration. And I hope that our coalition, our partners, will be a real partner for our governments, real think tank, real advisory board to our governments, to fight on the European market for real digital industry, digital economy in our region. And after a few years, we can meet one more time in Poland or in some other country of our region, and we'll be able to say that we have built a real digital economy in our region, and our region is the heart of digital industry in the whole European Union. So one more time, thank you very much for signing this declaration, that you were so open for our cooperation, and I hope, and please invite your friends from your countries to support this declaration, support our coalition, and I hope to see you as soon as possible in live in Poland or in another country, and please let me invite Daniel to provide next steps in our today meetings.
Thank you very much, Michał, for this introduction and the opening speech. And now I have the pleasure to open Challenge 1. As you probably all know, we're going to have 5 moderated discussion, and we like to call them challenges. And the first challenge is called the role of the ICT industry after the pandemic crisis. And again, I would like to ask Michał to say 2 introductory sentences and kick off the discussion.
Thank you very much. I promise that I will say only two sentences and let our friends talk a little bit more. Of course, our sector is in a specific moment right now because of pandemic. Right now we have a real revolution in global economy, in European economy, and our sector is one of the most important part of this revolution. And we have to take care about this revolution to use this situation to build a stronger digital part of economy of our region. But of course, we would like to support not only economy of CEE countries. For example, right now we have a very good example initiative from Polish side to support ICT sector in Belarus, which is in a specific situation, political situation right now. I hope that we will be able, as a free seas countries, build a digital economy not only in our region, but will be exporting ideas of ICT technology, exporting ideas how to build a strong, modern, innovative economy across whole Europe, and will help Belarus, Ukrainian friends to build in their country a strong business in our sector. So I'm sorry, unfortunately, Anna couldn't join our meeting online. I hope that during our meeting, Anna from Belarus will join our meeting, and then we'll let her speak. But for now, thank you much, and please feel free to talk a little bit more about situation which we have right now in our countries after pandemic crisis, or during pandemic crisis, I can say, about your plans in your countries, about recovery fund. What is your opinion about European recovery fund? Do you have in your countries some specific ideas how to use this crisis to build a stronger digital industry in our region? And what is the situation in general about digital industry, digital companies in your countries during this pandemic crisis? Thank you very much, and feel free. Andrew, maybe you were so close to me, so...
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a very general question. How are we affected by the COVID situation? Well, the good thing about it that people were forced to stay digital. I mean, we've been opening sectors of the economy that nobody would imagine before that would be digitalized, and that created an agenda with our governments that they have to look into digital, not because it's cool, not because it's modern, but it's a matter of survival. In Bulgaria, that has been another challenge because we're probably the less digitalized country still. There is a huge gap between the capital and smaller cities, and many people they were forced to retrain. So what actually happened, that created the market for, not only for remote tools, because we've been all living in Zoom, we've been having dinners in Zoom, we've been seeing friends in Zoom, you know, we've been digitalizing our own social life, especially during the lockdown. But we've been very happy to see the rise of things like hackathons. We had 4 winners at the European hackathons that fights the pandemic, and not only in the healthcare segment, but also in the retraining segment. We had a very active role of our Ministry of Labor and Social Politics. We're quite blessed to have the European Commissioner for whatever is digital, is Maria Gabriel. Plus we have a very active member of the European Parliament that has been pushing the agenda on a national level of digitalizing certain critical things. So one of the things that actually also brought to life an old question of the gap between ourselves and what we call Western Europe. So we've just realized that we're so much behind it. And you know, this event is a good example that we finally came to the realization that it's not only us, country by country, that we need kind of a single digital market of ideas to tackle what's been happening. Because in CEE, we're particularly affected by this digital gap between what's been happening in other countries. And I'm talking about lack of infrastructure only and lack of computers you know, for kids at schools, because we've been donating various resources to have kids being able to access technology, but we realized the potential for retraining and similar initiatives. So I'm looking forward to a discussion. I have certain examples of what happened with us, a certain thing that I hope I'll present shortly. That involves AI into something that affects our countries, but not to monopolize the conversation, I'll just pass the microphone. So look forward.
I mean, Andrew, feel free to share the experiences from your country as well, because it's very interesting.
All right.
Since you have the microphone, it's just easier, and you're a great person to just start to kick off the discussion, because my next question was how the pandemic changed businesses, social and economic relations, and I would like you to share experiences from Bulgaria.
I'll share one example. A part of what I do for the public domain, I'm a partner of a German media group called ProSieben, and we're developing a pretty sizable research and development center in Bulgaria for them. Then what happened is we got excited. I mean, it's kind of hard to get excited because the COVID pandemic is not an exciting thing by itself. But we said, okay, people will stay at home. They'll watch more digital entertainment. This is part of our core business. And yes, demand spiked first 5 times, then 10 times, then 15 times. What actually happened is that we started losing a lot of money in that because demand spiked, but we've been an advertising-based business model. Our advertisers disappeared. Then you realize that basically you have automotive companies as part of your advertising thing. So it's been a challenge also to reinvent ourselves on costs, look for better models. We've been pressed to be more efficient and effective. But the most important challenge was what do you do with the people? You suddenly have, maybe, 25% of your workforce, it's digital, but you don't want to lose those people. So one of the questions was the morale of the company, what do you do with those people? And, what actually happened, lessons from the friends and nearby countries, especially in the CEE, who's been affected by a similar problem, actually prompted us to reinvest anything we had and retain the people. So one of the things that I would like to say is one of the lessons learned was realization how vulnerable we can be, and that it's always pros and cons, so it's very vulnerable. We reinvented ourselves for sure. We learned how to be more effective and efficient, and we've been able to optimize our cost structure by something like 25% without firing 25% of people. So this is one particular example I think I can share.
Michał, please.
Excuse me, but we have right now information that Anna Pobol has joined our meeting, so maybe I will suggest to let her speak right now. Anna, hello, Anna.
Hello, Have I? I don't know how to help with this. Sorry.
Anna,
Is it better?
that's why
Do you hear me?
meetings
Yes,
live
yes, yes, yes.
much better. Hello, Anna. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Hello, colleagues. So
can
first of
hear
all,
you.
I'm very
Anna, we
glad
can see you, but we're not
to
able
meet
to
all
hear
of
you.
you. I see that now we have
There is some
changing
problems.
game in game rules, and we have the different challenges that we need to address all together. First of all, greetings to you from Belarus. As you see, there are big changes upcoming in our country, and we can, of course, see them in the negative light, but I would like to see them rather positively. So you will see that our country is becoming the new quality of the partner for your region, because both people and companies are trying to realize their not only interests but also rights and also powers, how they can change the situation. So actually what is happening in our country is that people are taking their lives in their own hands, and even if the policemen are not, the policy people or policymakers are not agreeing with this, anyhow we can continue to work creatively, adding value. And what I am observing now in IT companies in our country is that these IT companies are trying to realize themselves not only as part of one country, but as a part of the region. And actually what we're trying to do now at the InfoPark Association is to revise how we as the country and how we as an IT sector can contribute to the whole situation. And we are actively participating in different international projects. We see that in taking into addressing the situation and the pandemic crisis, there are many changes in the educational system of the countries in Belarus, in Ukraine, and also in other countries. Actually, we are almost ready to come up with a new initiative for closer cooperation of Central and Eastern Europe. And probably I will stop now here. We can discuss this suggestion a little bit later, but just now, thank you for inviting, and let's combat the situation together.
Before you joined, one more time. No, that's fine. Anna, before you joined our meeting, I told about initiative from Polish side, building a special program supporting young engineers of ICT from Belarus. So I hope that our coalition, our coalition of 3 CEE countries, will support not only developing of our region, but we are open for cooperation with you Ukrainian partners, to build together common digital market in the whole CEE region of Europe. I hope that after a few years we're really a very strong global player in digital economy. So Daniel, excuse me, floor is yours.
No worries, Michał. Thank you for that. And thank you so much, Anna, for your fascinating inputs. Before you joined, we had some remarks from Michał from Poland. We had some remarks from Andrzej Bacharov from Bulgaria. So now halfway between those countries is Hungary. So I would like to ask Mr. Matrai Gabor from IVSZ, ICT Association of Hungary, about how the pandemic has changed Hungary, and can you please share experience from your country? I think we have some technical issues here. We're not able to hear you. yes, I think this is the pandemic, and this is the beauty of online conferences, that there are always technical issues. We're not able to hear you. We can see you. We see you. You are talking, but
There was no. Do you hear now?
yes, we can hear you now. Great, thank you. Please carry on.
My speaker is on.
Now perfectly. Can you hear us?
I hear you with an echo.
I hear Gabor very well.
Carry on.
Maybe something wrong in Poland.
Yes, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let's start again. Welcome everybody on this very important meeting and very promising one. I think that this kind of cooperation is very important for all of us. Instead of using bilateral cooperation, I think the multilateral cooperation is very important for the countries in Central Eastern Europe. Before that, I would, before going into the details in connection, what is our operation and action concerning the pandemic and in connection with the pandemic, let's start with an announcement. Which announcement is belonging to the declaration, which was shared by Michal. And I also would like to express my wish, we can meet, or we could meet each other in person in a short time in the future, because it would be very important, to get these personal meetings. However, the online meetings are also good to change the mind, to change the ideas. So the announcement. As you know, I am also the board member of Digital Europe, as Michael was for 4 years. I was re-elected for another additional 2 years, and I suggested or advised the board of Digital Europe to get some kind of cooperation between the board members, which means that the board members Digital Europe board members are responsible for given specific topics and the areas. And my topic is Central Eastern Europe and funding the growth of SMEs. These two issues are in hand in hand. On the other hand, this means that the importance of our region, Central East. So the importance of our region, Central Eastern Europe, is recognized in Digital Europe as well. And also, I would like to escalate and put into the level of Digital Europe. Do you hear me now? What does it mean in the practice? The economic growth of Europe, one of the most important engines is Central Eastern Europe. If you look at GDP growth, and also very important to be in the way which we said, the convergency of the region to Eastern Europe, and digitization is one of the key issue or element of this convergence. It's an opportunity for all of us to accelerate our convergence to the western part of Europe, and to boost the Hungarian and the regional, and of course, the Central European GDP, or not only GDP, the gross value added, which our industry or industries or digitized industries could contribute to the regional economy. Therefore, it's very important to cooperate to each other, and therefore it's again welcome this cooperation and declaration, and also very important to help to support the development of the society, not only the economy. Therefore, one of the most important part of the development or well-being of the society is the health. And digitalization could help very, very good way the increase of the health level of the region, health level of the people, and well-being of the people. And this is one of the answer, you know, not to respond to the pandemic challenges or pandemic problems. This is the overall contribution to the well-being and increasing of the level of the well-being of the society in our region. So I would like to highlight this issue as well, not only the contribution to the economy, which of course is in line with the level of the society or health level of the society or well-being of the society, but concentrate our efforts and our industry to the society as well. So back to the first remark and announcement that Digital Europe also recognized the importance of our region. I would like to boost this cooperation, and my personal goal is also to help and enlarge and strengthen this cooperation, the Central Eastern European countries, and raise our voice more louder to the western part of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabor, for your input. So we had voices from Poland, from Bulgaria, from Hungary, from Belarus. So now I suggest we go a little bit up north in the CEE region to one of the most developed when it comes to informatization countries, Estonia. And I would like to ask Mr. Yuri Joema from ITL, which is the Estonian Association of Information Technology and Telecommunications, for his input.
I'm afraid that Yuri was disconnected for a few minutes. So maybe I will ask Mario, our southern neighbor, from your point of view on these issues.
Our governments are working on recovery plans, which I assume all the governments are doing so. In Slovakia, it's the situation so that Slovakian government, which is new, imagine they took power on 30th of March, so just right in the middle of pandemic. And I hope that they will learn soon to rule the country properly, not only fight the pandemic. Together with the government, we are working on preparation of national reform plan. Out of this national reform plan, there should be projects and reforms funded either by Recovery and Resilience Fund or the multi-annual financial framework, or from the state budget as such. Thanks to pandemia, I can say that there is much more digital issues in all the discussions among government members. On one hand, this is good. On the other hand, we see that not many ministers or members of parliament or politicians really do understand what we are talking about when we are talking about digital transformation process. In many cases, they think that the digital is that they can run computer and send some messages or participate at the video conference. And also I can say that we have a lot of work to explain what we are really talking about. So that's why I'm happy that we can add one more argument, which will be the declaration, where all the digital and innovative issues are named and framed very well. And for sure, we will use this document to further make more pressure on the government to be more active and more progressive when using digital technologies. During the pandemic time, our members also tried to help teachers to facilitate and use digital communication technologies. I think all of you did this. We have found also that probably only 20–25% of teachers were immediately ready to use such communication tools, and it took a lot of months to train others. And we also created a crisis plan for second wave of pandemia for the Ministry of Education. Unfortunately, they didn't spend summertime for training teachers and prepare them well for the second wave, which obviously would come, and we see that it came. So we continue with the education of teachers furthermore, even now. But anyway, I think that digital becomes much more important as a horizontal issue, and digital will be implemented in everything we know. And I think we are right there to help ourselves, our businesses as well, and also to all the economies. I can confirm that our IT distributors and vendors had the highest sales during pandemic time in the history, which also shows that sometimes such unpleasant issues or like pandemic can help also the IT industry. And I see also that many enterprises are now talking much more about digital transformation. We are raising the issue of lifelong learning and increasing of digital skills and competencies. It's quite difficult when you are talking to government anyway. And I'm happy that we can share this information among all of us, and looking for a good cooperation and discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. So I think everyone agreed so far that pandemic obviously is not a great event to be excited about. However, the digital industry had gained some potential from it. So my question would be now, is the digital industry ready to take the full advantage of the potential it has gained from the pandemic? Whoever would like to answer that question and has any thoughts. If not,
Maybe I will start
Digital
a
Poland.
few from maybe Czech Republic will join my answer. Frankly speaking, on your question, I can say yes, and finish discussion.
Great. Next.
New products which are ready for this revolution, and thanks of this product, we can still work and live in Europe, in the whole world, without almost without any problems in even private relations, because we said that even today that thanks for industry, digital technologies. Last few months we could live, we could be in touch with our friends, with our family, we can work, we can even whole actions for administration were inside internet, inside digital technology. So our industry is ready, but the second hand and the question from other side, in my opinion, is much more important. I mean, is it administration and business, but not industry, our technology industry, but the business, administration, and consumers are ready for that. And this is a much more complicated situation because first of all, we have to take care about, for example, digital skills in our societies. I think that in this area we have to do a lot of work to prepare our societies to living and working inside internet and using this technology whole day in every part of our life. On the second hand, administration, which is really inside this revolution and on the beginning of this crisis, this pandemic. Administration in every country, especially in our region, was in a very hot situation, and they had to prepare for this revolution in new products, new services. But it still needs a lot of investment in administration to prepare our governments to this new world for relations between administration and society. And second, the last thing is business. Business, in my opinion, is completely isn't ready for this revolution. And a lot of companies, especially small and medium companies, thought that internet, new technology, digital technology is only laptops in our companies, maybe cloud a little bit to keep our data, and nothing more. Right now, they realize that it was completely mistake. That right now they have to invest a lot of money, a lot of time to prepare their companies, their employees to new reality in this area. And finally, in all these parts, in administration, consumers, and business, finally we have to take care, especially in this situation, in security, because during revolution. Many times we don't want to or don't have enough time to think about cybersecurity, because we had to be active in internet, we had to be active in our jobs, in our administration, ministries, companies, via internet, via laptops. We have to take care about cybersecurity. Right now, after this first step of technology revolution, after crisis, we have to take care about and prepare our market to new situation, not only from digital skills, not only for equipment in new products, but in knowledge how to be active in this digital world and be secure at all. So, Michal, maybe you will add something, especially about this part of building this new technology world, about equipment. What is the most important part of this building new world in our region from the equipment side, hardware?
Mr. Michal Mazal from ASC Consumer Electronics Association of the Czech Republic. The floor is yours.
Hear me. Still some echo. Sorry, I don't know where is the problem.
Right now it's good.
Okay, perfect. So thank you. So good afternoon again to everyone, and thank you for this even online meeting. And I very appreciate your cooperation and active participation on this coalition in this digital sector. And as you know, Europe and also our country is in this period very difficult situations, and the industry is also in very difficult situation, and very problem with the people and many other issues, and some companies, and especially the heavy industry, together with some effort to digitalization, they are focusing on the protecting of the people, and industry is basically going to online sector, and usually this is the new opportunity to looking for new areas of digitalizations. And even we have quite bad situation currently. The industry is going ahead, and there are a lot of activities in our country and in respect to digitalizations, and there are a lot of new projects, and in order to inform the people how to improve their life in these seasons. And there are a lot of discussions and online meetings with government and some relevant ministries in order to continue in some important discussions related to open issues as DSA, AI, and so on. And what we now solve very actively in our country is 5G network, and because the government introduced new conditions in this area, and we realized that this condition are not so perfect, and partially against in some, let's say, European regulations. So this is the new fight, and very active, and this is the main job what we are working now. And if we go back to current situations, we realize that when we are discussing with governmental people and with politicians, that there is very poor awareness about digital sectors and what we need, and we realize that we have to learn them about the future, about the technologies, what is needed, and so on. So we are preparing some new projects also in this way, how to learn the politicians in order to support our requirements for future.
Much, Michal, for your input. We have 5 minutes more in this panel. I would, and it's not enough for this question, but I would really like to know, do you think that new digital regulations are necessary in the current situation we have? I see Andrei is nodding. No? So?
One sentence, and I will give microphone to Andrei. I'm afraid that if we are talking about regulations in digital sector, we have to be very careful, because we need a very balance in regulation, because it's very easy in our sector to prepare too much regulations, which kill this sector, but not enough regulations. It's dangerous for our sector too. So it's very complicated, and we have to. Our governments must be very careful about it. So that's why we will try to help them to find this balance between inside this regulation issue. But
Andrew, what's your take
yes,
on it?
I have a very short statement. There was an ongoing debate on the Digital Sovereignty Act in Europe, and I can't say that. You know, we in Bulgaria like the way it's going, honestly, because, you know, excluding US or Chinese technology from being able to access the European Union, in favor of what the great European Union is able to create is kind of a questionable thing. Because one thing we see about legislation, and we fully support the declaration, the Warsaw Digital Declaration, that we need to have more localized, state-driven, but aligned CEE legislation that enables capacity. But we see a lot of overregulation. Digital Sovereignty Act is one good example, where the European Union is saying, okay, let's channel European funds of creating the next Google. We had this, I think, they spent several billions on a very failed search engine.
We still don't have the next Google here in Europe.
No, and because I took a participation in another panel. It was an excellent showcase of about 5 multi-billion European Union funded projects. The next search engine, the Galileo satellite program, which also was a big bust. So the thing is that I think we need to have an aligned legislation that kind of balances the digital gap and inequality between CEE countries and other countries that has been adopting European funding for science and digital. So in essence, no, you don't need an extra European-wide legislation. Yes, we need local legislation to enable capacity. That's simple as that.
But in these local regulations, we need to harmonize it between our countries in our region to build a stronger cooperation between industries of our countries. We need to share our best cases in our countries, if we're talking about regulations, to create the best one in Europe.
Thank you, Michał. We have 3 minutes more in this panel. Does anyone want to take the floor on the regulations issue? I think we don't hear anyone. We are ready to move on. It's 12:30 and I'm happy to introduce Mr. Joe Phillips, who is Head of Investment of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund, and he will give us a short presentation on how the fund works. Joe, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen and see if that works, and you can see the presentation. I will. Actually, I'm unable to share my screen. It says the host has disabled sharing, so I don't know if the host can enable me to share my screen and you'll be able to see the presentation. Is that possible? Okay, I guess it's not possible. Can everyone hear me? And I'll try and proceed without the presentation.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. My apologies. We do have a short presentation for you, but I'm unable to share my screen. So let me try and do it without a presentation. So first of all, my name is Joe Phillips. I am from Amber Infrastructure. We are the investment managers of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. As I said, I'm very happy to be here today. I'm sorry I can't attend in person. I am actually spending most of my time in Warsaw, but I'm actually back in the UK for a couple of weeks at the moment. I think it's very clear that there's strong alignment between the Warsaw Digital Declaration and the 3Cs Initiative and the 3Cs Fund. So what I'll try and do is provide an overview of the 3Cs Fund itself and how it can help in terms of digital infrastructure within the 3Cs region. So first of all, let me tell you who Amber is. Amber is a UK headquartered infrastructure fund manager. We are infrastructure specialists. We have a long history of managing infrastructure funds within the UK, and we manage about 4.5 billion euros of capital, which is invested in the UK, Western Europe, North America, and Australia, and all of it is infrastructure. We have been involved, many of us, in this sector since the early 90s. And I think what's important to note is that the infrastructure sector as an asset class didn't exist until the mid to late 90s. So we were all involved in the very early days of infrastructure investment. And as part of that, we have done a lot of greenfield investment in infrastructure, not just in hard infrastructure like energy assets, transportation assets, water assets, but also in digital infrastructure. We actually manage the UK's National Digital Infrastructure Fund. So we have a significant focus on digital infrastructure. We have about 135 people, and those people are based in London, in Munich, in 2 offices in North America and Australia. And we have recently just opened offices in Warsaw, Prague, and Vienna to cover the Central and Eastern European region as part of our management of the 3 Cs Initiative Investment Fund. So we'd like to think that we are a firm that has a long experience of infrastructure investment around the world, but now increasingly with a focus on the 3 Cs region. So I think we can bring the benefit of some of the experience and history we've had in developing infrastructure, both generally and within digital infrastructure, for the benefit of the 3 Cs region. Turning to the 3 Cs Initiative Investment Fund itself, let me give you a brief overview of that. The 3 Cs Fund is part of the 3 Cs Initiative. The 3 Cs Initiative is a broader geopolitical grouping, which of the heads of state of the EU member states between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas. But the 3 Cs Fund is a commercial infrastructure investment fund which has received seed capital from a significant number of the 3 Cs Initiative countries. So as of today, we have 560 million euros of capital, which comes from Poland through BGK, from Estonia, Latvia, and Romania. And over the course of this year, we believe that the other countries within the 3 Cs region will make commitments to the fund. Hungary and Bulgaria have already announced that they will be making those investments. So this is a commercial fund. The intention is that whilst it is seeded by the individual member countries, we will next year open the fund to private capital and raise private capital. We are, as a fund, our job is to generate a commercial return. This is not free money or grant money. This is commercial infrastructure capital available for investment in the region in 3 sectors. I think it's important to say that this is the only infrastructure fund that is solely focused on the 3 Cs region. I think that's a great benefit because it means we cannot get distracted by potential investments outside that region. We make investments of between 30 and 200 million euros, and we have a focus on creating assets, so greenfield or new assets. You might ask why the fund exists, and I think the fund exists for a number of reasons. The first is that there is a clear infrastructure gap in the 3 Cs region. The latest report we have suggests that between now and 2030, there's a need to invest over 500 billion euros in the sector, in the countries within the region, in infrastructure. And that's split between energy, transportation, and a significant part, over 130 billion euros, is digital infrastructure. The region has total trade turnover of well over 200 billion euros, and it has significant GDP growth and about 25% of the EU's population and about 30% of its territory. But it does lag behind the rest of the EU in terms of the capital that is available for infrastructure. And that results in a number of things. It results in poor connectivity, both in terms of physical transportation and digital. And it also, in the energy sector, results in a lack of interconnection and energy security within the region. The fund is designed to help address that infrastructure gap. And we have a target size for the fund of between 3 and 5 billion euros. Now, 3 to 5 billion is not a significant number compared to over 500 billion of requirement, but the idea of the fund is that we will we will bring other capital alongside us. We will act as a leading investor, and we'll bring other funds and debt capital alongside us. But also the fact that we make investments will demonstrate to other funds in the private sector that this is a region in which you can make successful investment and therefore bring other capital into the region. I think it's fair to say that in Western Europe, there's an abundant supply of private capital for infrastructure, but that is not the case in the 3Cs region. So the fund is designed to address that structural gap by demonstrating that we can make successful investments. So just turning to I'll give you a brief overview of the sectors we're looking at within infrastructure, and I'll then focus on digital. We look at energy, transportation, and digital infrastructure, and that's a relatively broad remit. And to give you a flavor, the energy sector includes energy generation, so gas generation, renewable energy, gas networks, distribution networks, and all other forms of energy efficiency within the region. And that's to deliver assets that both help the region meet the need for energy security, help the region meet its climate change requirements to minimize carbon emissions, and to provide capital for that energy transition over the coming decade. So that's energy. We then have transportation, and we are focused on a wide variety of transportation assets. So road, rail, inland waterways, ports, potentially airports, although it's a slightly difficult area at the moment. And the idea is to increase the physical interconnectivity in the region. Historically, the region suffered from poor north to south links, and the fund is designed to provide capital to improve those links. And finally, digital infrastructure. And in digital infrastructure, we are focused on a number of areas. We're focused on investment in fiber networks to improve both interconnectivity in the backbone within the region, and also to improve fiber to the premises and to the home. We're focused on data centers. We believe that that's an important part of digital infrastructure in the region. And we're focused on 5G implementation as well. So we have capital for all of those types of projects, which will help ensure that the digital infrastructure in the region is on a par, if not ahead of, other parts of the European Union. And our focus in all of those areas is on greenfield assets. So what we'd like to do is provide capital that is going to build new assets. That doesn't mean we can't invest in existing businesses or assets, but there needs to be expansion, modernization, or significant future investment in capital expenditure as part of our investment. So that's the sectors. We see the need in digital infrastructure but to 2030 as being at least 120 billion euros. So I think there's more than enough to be done, and we have a clear focus on the digital sector. We're already looking at data centers and fiber in the region, and we are hopeful that one of our first investments will be a digital infrastructure investment. Just moving on then, how do people access the fund? So I think the important thing is that my role at Amber is to help originate transactions in the region. We have a team that's based in London, Warsaw, Prague, and Vienna. And what we are trying to do is build partnerships with corporates, with advisors, government, that will help us find appropriate digital infrastructure investments within the region. So we're looking basically to get to know as many people as possible, to discuss their investment requirements, to see where the fund can help them, and to build those partnerships. Because any investment in an infrastructure asset, whether it's digital, transportation, or energy, is a long-term partnership between the fund providing capital and the partners in those assets who are going to operate them. So we have a very collaborative approach, and we're looking for those partnerships. I think we sometimes get the question, well, at the moment you have a lot of governments invested in the fund. How does that impact your investment decisions and how you look at the region? So the first point to make is that we say we're politically inspired, but we're not politically influenced. The investment decisions for the fund are made by an independent investment committee. that has been appointed. The Amber is a professional fund management firm, so our job is to find the right investments on a commercial basis. And finally, our objective is to deliver a commercial return to those investors, whether they be public or private. It's very important that we demonstrate that, because next year we want to bring private sector investors into the fund, and it's important that they see it's a commercial fund that's designed to align capital with the operators of assets, whether they be digital, energy or transportation assets. Our job is to find those assets, to make those investments, and then to provide the asset management, working with the operational partners and joint venture partners and equity partners to deliver success over a 15-year period as a minimum. So that the fund life is 15 years. It may be extended out to 20, but we're essentially a long-term investor who will align ourselves with with our partners. So finally, and I'm sorry you can't see the presentation. Finally, how do partners engage with the fund? Well, myself and the team are the first port of call, and hopefully the organisers of the conference can provide our contact details to the attendees. We would be very happy to have conversations by Zoom or by telephone or in person in the region with anyone who would like to discuss the fund and how it operates and how to access capital with us. I think that's really all I have to say today. I am very happy that we've had this opportunity to introduce the fund. I believe strongly that it's very aligned with the declaration. I believe strongly that there's massive opportunity within the region, and I think digital is going to become even more important, notwithstanding the pandemic. I think it was going to be important anyway, but given the pandemic, I think the provision of high quality digital infrastructure has become more critical than ever. I think it will do a number of things. It will bring the countries and the people within the 3Cs region closer to one another in a virtual way, and it will bring the 3Cs region to better, more equal integration with the rest of the European Union. So thank you very much for your time this morning or this afternoon. It's still morning in the UK. I hope to be able to speak to many of you over the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
For this brilliant speech. I don't think anyone here missed the presentation.
Yeah.
Michał wants to say a few
One more,
words.
because I saw that Gabor asked for presentation. Joe, if you will send out this presentation to us, we will share this presentation to all of our partners in CEE region, in 3Cs countries. So it will be easier to prepare next steps of our communication between you and our partners in countries. Thanks.
Thank you, Michał. That's a brilliant idea. And again, the presentation was, the speech was very illuminating. Just to remind everyone, this was Joe Phillips, Head of Investment for the 3Cs Initiative Fund. And now we are going to go into challenge number 2. And I want to give the floor to my colleague Maryjka, who is a colleague from my website, Trzysta Gospodarka, who will introduce and moderate the next 2 challenges. Thank you very much.
Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Maryjka. As Diane has already introduced me. And we'll be talking about artificial intelligence, which is the technology of today and probably of the future. In our second challenge, we've got 2 speakers. We've got 30 minutes. And before we'll be starting off with the questions, I'd like to ask you, Andre, to give a presentation. It's your turn, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, I had a small change. Can I connect this or? No, okay, cool. presentations. I can do that, but I think it's a bit, I don't know. What is more convenient? Do it from here or there? Oh, this is the, okay, cool. If you could open the presentation real quick. Okay. Do we have the presentation in the background? Okay. All right. Okay. What I wanted to talk about is something which is a combination of something super mundane, which is electrical grids and artificial intelligence. The reason I'm addressing that is because I've spent a lot of time in the field. I myself am a PhD in computer science, and I've been quite delighted to hear the presentation from Josef from Amber, because I kind of shared the same background as a fund manager, investing almost 100 million euros into renewables. And investing into Eastern Europe is not an easy thing, especially if you have to deal with energy infrastructure. So what happened in the past, we've started looking at ways of helping people, and that's why I'm so glad to be here and explain what we actually did and we're still doing, applying real artificial intelligence into real business. So what's been happening for the past 10 years, the whole value chain has been completely redesigned. Entrance of renewables and smart automation projects basically turned upside down the whole value chain, where you had your average power plant, transmission networks, distribution networks, and finally consumers. So we started become from consumers to prosumers to active participants, not only in the electricity market, but also in the data market, sharing data, sharing power, and building a lot of expectations for that sector. So what actually happened, for the past 10 years, we've evolved from an average bill payer to become a prosumer, meaning that we not only consume energy, we also produce energy. This is anything from rooftop photovoltaic panels. Then we suddenly evolved to become a roaming consumer. You know, we're not only producing energy, but we want to control what's happening. We want to exchange data, electrons with our neighbors. We want to integrate our electrical vehicles. We want to be more green. And this is starting to affect the grid more and more. Now, just to illustrate the rate of digitalization is in the amount of billions. It's in the utilities, electrical utilities alone, we're expecting tens of billions of investments into a market that actually did not exist something like 10 or 15 years ago. So by year 2023, we see a rapid increase of investments into demand response technologies, into smart metering, into renewables, and this is starting to affect the grid in a way that was actually absolutely unpredictable literally 10 years ago. I spent almost 8 years seeing that, and what actually has been happening to the electrical grids is very similar to what has been happening to telecoms. So then what happened, the ecosystem became so complex that you not only produce energy, you not only manage energy, you also manage a lot of data. And one of the problems with this complexity is that we're not only having data that's coming from the grid, we also have data and systems that actually manage the grid. Which brought us to the problem of, well, are we really affected by that? And to illustrate from my home country, Bulgaria, just a small example, the main investor into our fund was a Czech utility called ČEZ, CZ. So actually a small example of a small country under 8 million people, only a part of the country actually affects more than 2 million households. Because we're talking a lot about digitalization, but we keep forgetting one thing. Without power, which we all expect as a commodity, there is nothing. And we started seeing a huge problem, potential problem, that if we have unrestrained rate of digitalization without any thinking what can happen, we can have all kind of cyber attacks, we can have all kind of malfunctions in the grid that actually can lead to dramatic results. So we've been thinking about a solution, and what I wanted to present to you is a startup I co-created with a bunch of people, which is actually using drones and artificial intelligence for predictive maintenance in electrical power lines. So basically our solution is using drones for faster and cheaper visual technical inspection of power lines. We literally go to places where humans or vehicles cannot easily reach, and we achieve real preventive maintenance using AI. And I'll demonstrate that with a video as well. So actually, when we sit here in warm, cozy, lit environment, having all our equipment plugged in and communicating with people, we hardly realize that at the end of the day, it comes to wires like that. There's actual drone footage from one of our drones, and this is what the grid really looks like. I mean, I don't know how many of you has been to Bulgaria, but half of our country is real mountain. So what actually happens to the grid, to access the grid, to repair that, it's sometimes extremely hard to reach. And this is the grid up close. So you really go to mountains, swamps, lakes to be able to do that. So what we started doing, we started applying artificial intelligence. The name of the company we created called Power Drone for automatic identification of problems in the grid and their preventive maintenance through a platform that is able to not only detect what is out there in the grid, but also detect what kind of problems exist. We have a recent example. In Sofia, there was a power line that had more than 35 unplanned shutdowns. So basically what it means that electricity was disappearing. So basically what we saw, we launched drones, we were able to identify the problems that people were not able to find for months and months. And one great example I'm very proud of, we're doing that at the fraction of the cost of people. So in Bulgaria, we're not the highest paying income country in the whole European Union. And I think we're also probably the poorest country in the whole CEE domain. But what is happening is we've been able to do that at the fraction of the cost what people should be able to go there out and detect it. So what actually is happening is we've been able to use AI with combination of drones to build an automatic digital twin of our grid. And this is something that I would challenge the imagination of everyone. This is something that we want to cooperate with CEE countries on building digital twins of infrastructure. I don't know how many are familiar with the term of digital twin. Well, basically, we recreate the power line in the virtual cloud domain, and we start experimenting with the power line. So basically what we're able to do, we can simulate blizzards, we can simulate earthquakes, we can actually plug in a lot of data that's super hard to analyze and process by human minds. And by utilizing various AI technologies, we're able to really figure out what can actually happen to the grid for the purpose of predictive maintenance. We started using things that some people dub as machine imagination. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term of generative adversarial networks. It's basically two neural networks fighting with each other and to be able to create things that don't exist yet. So basically, I will not go into detail how it works, but this is a term, if there is anyone in the virtual panel that's interested to explore, this is something that we started experimenting with. This has been created only 5 years ago. Basically, the way it operates, you have two neural networks. One is discriminator, the other is generator. So they train each other, and they can execute hundreds of transactions in a millisecond. They train each other to become better at image recognition, which led us, by training our algorithms, we're now able to achieve almost 100% accuracy, understanding automatically what's out there in the grid. Just for reference, we found out that in CEE, because the power lines were built somewhere in the 60s, in general, most utilities only know about 10% of their respective grids. So it's been built back in time, it's not digitalized, and this is something that we started doing. And we're quite proud to be able to cooperate with a bunch of universities on that. We're proud to be cooperative with a lot of big corporate entities. We've been experimenting with Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services. We've been trying to work with Google on that, but we achieved really, really, really strong results. So, if there's anyone interested in the area of distributed generation, storage, renewable, energy efficiency, demand response, which means you don't invest heavily into wires and concrete and steel. You invest into software that manages your grid. We have means to apply artificial intelligence for visual recognition and machine learning to improve our algorithms to be able to recognize more and more problems. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do. We're quite proud of that. We've been awarded as the most innovative enterprise for 2019 by the President of Bulgaria. And this is something that's super scalable in CE, talking about digital single markets, because a wire is a wire everywhere. So basically we share a lot of post-communist format of our infrastructure and grid, and this is something that I'd really like to challenge people who want to find a combination of AI and something as dull as electrical networks. And I could run a short video, basically showcasing what we do, and finish my presentation, and answer whatever questions. Happy to answer any questions.
A pan Robert jest z nami? All right, so thank you, Andre, for your magnificent presentation and the video. We can proceed to our challenge and the questions about artificial intelligence. We saw already that artificial intelligence might be very supportive, but it might be also very disruptive, and this is why we need to have a strategy. And I don't know, have we got Mr. Robert Kroplewski with us? I think we can start with him and then move on to back to you, Andre.
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We are wait for the questions. If I good. We have some echo.
Robert, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, but we have some echo.
Sound is perfect, so the floor is yours.
Do you hear me?
Perfectly.
A European strategy in terms of artificial intelligence. What do you think?
Good morning, everybody. One more time. If you ask me about European strategy about artificial intelligence, maybe we can pause that question for some seconds. I'm very thank you for presentation and mentioning in that presentation, on my opinion, key elements that we need to build digital twins. If we think about infrastructure, if we think about logistic transportation of many goods, not only energy, of course, food, industry, and like that. And it was one thing. And second thing, what is very important, if we try to think about our CEE countries' strategies and European strategies, it's to create the special trusted data space. And it is possible because of launching and building the digital twins of our industries, our relations. And if we think about European strategy, we have a little some problems because this strategy related to artificial intelligence was divided for two strategies. One is related to the trust center of excellence, and second to data. In my opinion, that two strategies need to be one. We need to think like in the big picture, and thinking on that, especially if we try to establish relations between industries among our countries. It is very important to don't think only about the cloud system, cloud infrastructure, but think about the special space of sharing data. Of course, using, if you think about drones is only one element of digital transformation. But of course, we can think also about cloud manufacturing or edge computing and processing data on the edge of any devices. That system enable us to create the trusted space of trusted procedure in our industries. We can share our data to promote of cooperation on that data, but in the same moment we keep our intellectual property very close to the enterprise. And because of the new way of collaboration, when we don't need to compete using of data, we can create the new intellectual property results. Of course, we can think about algorithms and artificial intelligence in one moment, but it's not only one aim, because the important thing is how to use artificial intelligence to empower our physical business in many aspects. And that combination between the challenges coming from the physical business and using the benefits from artificial intelligence models could have us the best results. Thinking about our countries, we need to remember that the data flows and the electronic data flows is very depending and has influence on our GDP, and because of that we are very fragile about flowing of data, but in the same moment we can find our benefits processing of data among many actors. And this is enough if we establish a good ecosystem cross-borderly between our countries. But having data, having infrastructure, having even relation between our enterprises, we need also to think how to cooperate on the financial system and how to compete in front of many funds, European funds or private sector funds for developing of artificial intelligence. And this is, in my opinion, we have a big chance because our region represents a very creative society. We don't have any dependency from the old industry to create very smart new artificial intelligence models. And because of that, from the Polish perspective, we believe that creating a new ecosystem and creating a new market based on artificial intelligence, we can jump to the future industry and future society. And finally, our countries could be very competitive in front of many actors in Europe. But we don't need, we cannot think only like European-oriented actors. So it is very important to see the global competition. And from that perspective, if we could observe the special mechanism visualization of many data created by OECD, we can see that main competition is focused on migration of talents. And because of that, this is third key element which we need to manage, trying to build our robust economical ecosystem in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert, very much indeed. You've mentioned many issues. Robert has just mentioned many issues about artificial intelligence, but one thing remains still unsettling a little bit, which is ethics. And my question to you, Andre, is how to manage ethics and business in terms of artificial intelligence, how to combine those two?
Right. It's a very good question in the context of things like GDPR, etc. And it's very challenging because, for example, China doesn't manage ethics when they apply research into artificial intelligence. And there was a great book by a former Google the head of Google for China, which was published, I think, 2 years ago. basically it says that in about 5 years, China will overpower the whole of the world in terms of artificial intelligence because they have unrestricted access to all kind of consumer data. So the question again is, where is the balance? If we keep artificial intelligence away, there is a lot of debate what Google, Amazon, Facebook are doing to our privacy. I don't think we can stop it. I don't think it can be super regulated. And what I can share is that we need to think that if we don't do that, someone else will. So I think it requires a different debate. What I would advocate is investment into capacity to research and tackle that. But what is the morality? I think it's an open question. I can't answer that completely.
I have one question to Robert. Robert, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
A bit more in European group for AI strategy. And I have a question, what is your opinion? Is it possible in this European strategy for AI, what will be the more important in this strategy, in your opinion? This ethics or possibilities for business, doing business in AI for European countries? What will be the more important part, point of view in European strategy for AI? And do you think is it possible to have a real common strategy in practical way for whole Europe in AI? And when, in your opinion, when you see the working group in Europe, what the period of time you see when the Europe will be ready for real big business in AI?
Thank you for the question. It's a complex of many questions in one asking. From my experience, I could say that European Union tried to establish holistic picture of policy. It is not dividing between the ethics and the policy and investment. This is one thing. Why? Because European Union supported by experts from the high-level expert group of trustworthy artificial intelligence mainly decided to launch the concept trustworthy artificial intelligence if we think about ethics. But in that concept is also implemented in many recommendations related to the policy and investment. European Union believes very much that in front of different type and shape of and framework of ethics coming, for example, from the United States, very focus on utilization and usage, or focus, if you think about China, ethics focus rather about stability of society and economy. We can promote the trust, but not like an idea because this is a very good trademark, but like technical and not non-technical features embedded to artificial intelligence model and outside of artificial intelligence model. To the procedure of compliance and how to build the model inside. We have many values and many principles. If we think about the values, that values are related to the values of society and our constitutions and the fundamental rights. But principle, it's they are constructed rather like a technical implementable feature to artificial intelligence model. And that concept finally will be covered by a coordinated plan planned to be published by the European Commission. I think it will be on December this year. That will be final text of coordination plan, and in that text we could find final voice of European Union, how it would like to take part in the global competition. This is that concept. Yes, in my opinion, it is possible because our expert group created and now it's the time for promotion the assessment list and special questionnaire using which we can check if our artificial intelligence model and our developing of artificial intelligence model is compliant with trustworthy artificial intelligence concept. We have many rules, many chapters of checking that concept, and finally, we believe that promoting trust in embedded in technology could create new market for us, even in front of global other markets. In my opinion, it is possible because if we could compete it only because the computer power or storage of data, it will be a wrong direction for Europe, because that enablers belongs to the giants till now. Of course, European Union tried to establish HPC network and trying to enable speedity of computing for our actors, European actors, and that will be next good enabler for that strategy. But finally, what gap we have? Even we have many enablers, but one gap, it's very important. We don't have good coordination among many enablers. It is not a problem about Poland, but it's a problem about European Union as it is. Because European Union know that they have funds, they have access to data storage. We have like a member states society with talents, but we of course need to manage the competition and the special action from giants on our market. And finally, because of that, European Union decided to empower data strategy more than before. And in our country, in our Polish strategy, we produced the concept of virtual and data warehouses, like a federalization of decentralized storage of data. And but that concept may be a little changed. Will be a concept of European Union. It is very good if we could try to promote data sovereignty in Europe, but not as a keeping data only very close to the entrepreneurs and actors, but keeping data on our space. And because of that concept, we can invite the giants from outside of Europe to share data with us on mutual recognition rules. I think it could work. Why? Because any actors who process data now need to have data very actual. And after closing data in some trusted club, we could start to control our economy and our productivity, if you think about entrepreneurs. This is that. I think that concept is very prospective and could empower and engage many actors in Europe cross-borderly. This is the thing. And if you could see the Digital European program and now the Recovery Fund program also, you can see that only the feature of creating the cross-border cooperation will be the first element, first step to dedicate funds for some interested people, beneficiaries, and this is the problem. But this is the top-down concept. We need very much to cooperate from down to top, and I'm happy of that meeting, like today's meeting organized by your organization. We need that kind of meetings more. Focus on many topics, very concrete topics, not only about data, but about science cooperation also, and to create some hubs for our talents where they can find the challenges presented by enterprises or challenges presented by society. This is like that, in my opinion.
Thank you, Robert, for your valuable input.
One sentence,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
because I see that Robert is waiting. He's joined, but of course, thank you, Robert, for your speech. Always when during discussion about any European strategy, I thinking, is it useful for business in real life? So I would like to ask Andrew for this discussion, but of course we have no time. But I hope that after our meeting we could discuss how this European strategy in real life will be useful for business in AI, or maybe business AI will be developing without strategy much better in European Union. So it's always more philosophical question maybe, but maybe after we'll find some time for this kind of discussion. Thanks.
Do keep your question for our further discussion. Right now, I'd like to move on to our challenge number 3, which we've decided to combine with our challenge number 4. So we've got 3 speakers, and we'll be talking about cybersecurity. I'm sorry, and disruptive and innovative startups. Our speakers are the following: Mr. Robert Shudak, who's director in Kościuszko Institute, is online with us already. I've seen him. We've got also Jerzy Brodowski, who's a general manager in CEE Warsaw, and also Matraj Gabor from Hungary. He's also online with us. All right, so my first question is how to build an effective startup development strategy, keeping in mind cybersecurity, and that's a question to you, Robert.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the great chance to speak with such a wide panel of experts. So first and foremost, I would start with the notion that it's not easy. First, the cybersecurity sector itself is, comparing even to other ICT niches or ICT part of the ICT market, is pretty challenging for startups, to be short and to be really clear. Why? Because in cybersecurity, more or less, you sell trust. When you're building a kind of security for your digital transformation, you want to trust the vendor, you want to trust the service provider who is helping you to do so. And therefore, because as we know, startups, to be innovative, to be agile, in many cases, they are pretty young companies and pretty young entrepreneurs, not more than 1 or 2 years on the market. It is challenging to build a trust in front of a client if you are kind of trying to sell in this sector. Of course, there are a lot of, I would say, channels, tools, and solutions that might help you to do so. Of course, the technology is only the beginning. So, building your own product or a service based on innovative technology in cybersecurity is only the first step. To be honest, I know dozens of great technologies that didn't end up as a great product on cybersecurity market. And it is still an issue, both not only in Central and Eastern Europe, but globally, to be able to somehow harvest this technology and this technical knowledge that we have and transform them into a cybersecurity market per se, which means a product that has all the value for the client, not only the technology. So I mentioned about different, I would say, ways to build this trust and to build this, I would say, real product on cybersecurity market and real innovation that is there. First and foremost, of course, you might cooperate with the big players, either corporate or public sector. And there are a lot of good activities happening even in Central and Eastern Europe, starting from acceleration incubation programs, ending on other kind of partnership programs where young companies, such as we do have even, examples from Poland, can cooperate with either, I would say, publicly funded accelerators or even the global players such as Samsung, who, for example, opened incubation for cybersecurity startup here in Poland. But the second step is to cooperate together on the cybersecurity market. And that's why from the Kościuszko Institute, we created a few initiatives. The first one that I would just mention is Polish Cybersecurity Cluster CyberMate in Poland. So we do have almost 50 SMEs and startups who are building this cluster together in order to cooperate as an industry, as a kind of a group with the market, to show that we are not unknown small companies from nowhere, with no, I would say, connection to the network. We are part of the thriving ecosystem. And the example here that I mentioned is only one. More and more throughout last years, in many points of the globe, I would say, we see this kind of activities. So small regional, but also national ecosystems building together something like a cluster or something like a center of innovation, digital innovation, have focus on cybersecurity. In 2017, we started to kind of bond those different center of innovations, and we created a global EPIC, which is a platform for cybersecurity ecosystems who are supporting innovation. And for now, it's more than 30 ecosystems starting from Europe, but going out with partners from Taiwan, Israel, even Costa Rica, of course, US, Canada, and other parts. So connecting not only within the sector in specific region, country or region such as Central and Eastern Europe, but also globally, something which we call glocally. So build local, I would say, innovation and scale it into a global ecosystem and connect it to a global ecosystem of cybersecurity products and services. So, so I would say that's one of the solution, of course, or one of the example of tools and activities that might help young entrepreneurs, young innovative companies such as startups and SMEs who are entering the more cybersecurity part of their activities to build the trust in front of the market. And I think I will start with this one because I think that's one of the main issues that we still are hearing, one of the main challenge that we still hear when we speak with this young entrepreneurs. Like we have great technology, but when we speak with big clients, they ask about our history. They ask about our previous projects. And we are here on the market for, let's say, 5 months. How can we build this trust if not with the history?
Valuable input. The same question I'd like to ask you, Jerzy. Do you think it is possible, and how to do like a safe environment for startups concerning cybersecurity?
In terms of cybersecurity, I think I'm not a particular expert in terms of cybersecurity. I would say I am quite familiar with the ecosystem, startup ecosystem as a whole. But I think one of the main topics that need to be addressed in regards to that is the fact that the startup ecosystem itself is quite, I would say, flexible and works in a way that needs to be agile. I think all of us are familiar with lean methodology. And one of the issues with that is cybersecurity usually lacks in those solutions. So this is something that needs to be a topmost priority. And it also depends on what type of service we're talking about, whether it's related to something which is, for example, public, which relates to the public sector, or whether it only relates to, for example, B2C kind of enterprise. And I believe that we as I would say, the ecosystem in Poland and the wider CEE region have quite a bit of work to do in that regard. We've over the last, I would say, couple of years, we've faced a number of smaller cyber, well, threats is a big word, but threats that would relate to how our entire administration works. And it's something that can be certainly addressed by certain startups from our region, but also something that can be worked out not only by startups, but by startups with cooperation from larger enterprises. For example, I'm going to throw around the names: Microsoft, Google, Amazon. All of these major enterprises have a very, very strict policy in terms of how they operate and how their cybersecurity works within their companies, because the amount of data that they generate and possess requires them to be, well, basically as secure as possible. So there's a lot of potential for cooperation between startups and enterprises. And then we can kind of move it forward to a PPP partnership where we can build new ways and new solutions to basically seal our data and make it even more less vulnerable to potential threats. So I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And how it all looks from the Hungarian perspective, I'd like to ask you, Mátraj.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to check that. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least on my side.
Okay. Okay. I would concentrate not only on Hungary. First of all, it's very important, as Jerzy said, that the building ecosystem is a very important issue, because startup ecosystem is the key success indicator, you know, or the basis of build a very viable, promising and successful startup regime, you know, in this region. Back to this issue, it's very important to cooperate to each other in Central Europe and not only build a so-called national ecosystems, to build a regional ecosystem. Therefore, it's very important, you know, to use the cooperation arms between the startup organizations like Startup Poland and Startup Hungary. My suggestion or advice to build this cooperation network between these two entities, and of course enlarge it for the region, and establish this startup let's say organization or civil organizations to other countries as well, like Startup Bulgaria, Startup Romania, Startup Lithuania, and to establish the cooperation circumstances or environment of these entities. But I would like to go into a little bit the details or the general. You can judge it in different ways. Let's concentrate on the startup ecosystem. The global startup innovation landscape is dominated by US-based entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. Why is still that the case today. Inspirational success stories and role models, top entrepreneurs and investors have celebrity status. Their stories are commonly known, and every smart startupper understands that one of the paths to wealth and fame is via entrepreneurship. The other issue is dense concentration of entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and talent. Although the US is huge, most of startup innovation is concentrated in just a handful of areas, with Silicon Valley being the most infamous, also Boston, New York City, Austin, Los Angeles, and few others. These hubs have an immense pool, not just domestically, but also from EU and Asia. There is a large number of EU nationals in key positions in US startups, and most of them are not coming back. The networks of these areas create a virtuous cycle. Things how the founders of PayPal went on to create LinkedIn, Palantir, Tesla, for example, SpaceX, Founders Fund, OpenAI, etc. While there are some very limited examples of similar hubs in Europe, example around Skype's founders or the growth of the number of Finnish startups after Nokia's failure. They seem almost accidental and compose poorly with US hubs. This is again a characteristic of the US startup ecosystem, highly productive funnel and pipeline. The best accelerators and the best VCs are all American. The people who run them were either world-class entrepreneurs themselves or worked with those people. Startups from around the globe want to participate in Y Combinator and then get funded by the likes of Sequoia. The entire industry is extremely top-heavy with regards to returns. That is because the best entrepreneurs gravitate towards the best investors. Most of the best EU and Central European entrepreneurs raise money from the US, bypassing EU resources completely. There is a high standardized process. All startups generally are deliver C corporations, and there are VC lawyers over them and are not willing to touch anything else. And now, what is the situation in EU and in Central Europe? How we can close the gap, between this situation or build a real startup ecosystem? First is shift from the non-EU funds distribution to tax incentives. A lot of EU funds went into Jeremy and its successor with lackluster results, tainted by embezzlement and pure fund performance in many cases. In venture capital, private funds tend to massively outperform public funds in terms of value creation per dollar. In the US, the largest sources of VC capital are pension funds, university endowments, and family offices. We should intensify their EU counterparts or Central European counterparts to put a small percentage of their funds into venture capital and private equity investments. Part of the higher risk of these assets classes could be de-risked through tax relief instrument. Second, accept general partnership commitments, not just matching. A standard exceptions in almost every US venture capital funds is the so-called general partnership commitments, as known as managers having some skin in the game and contributing between 2 to 5% of the fund from their own private wealth to make sure that key take their fiduciary duties seriously. Third, favor fund managers who have entrepreneurial background. As organizations and asset class startups hold characteristics and risks which are completely out of norm when compared to other asset classes. The closest analogy can be drawn with PE, but even PE tends to deal with this private equity means with companies with established management teams, clientele, and balance sheet. Depending on stage, startups miss some or all of this. Therefore, fund managers coming from a corporate or banking background often have a hard time managing the risk and working with funders. Startup experience should be the #1 criteria for managing Central European-backed venture funds and European-backed venture funds. Fourth, and it's very important one, we have to reduce administration overhead. Yes, the funds in Europe and Central Europe should be protected against embezzlement. However, the only major thing a startup got going for it when competing against a well-managed major company is still ability to move faster. All the programs have some degree of extra administration layer which gets transferred by the intermediary to the portfolio companies. There is another important thing here, decrease startups' addiction to EU grants. It's a kind of contradictional issue, but many startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, are very keen on the EU grants. But it's very important to decrease this addiction to EU grants or from EU grants. There are way too many startups who optimize their entire existence for collecting grants from operative programs of structural funds. For example, the operating programs in Hungary or Horizon 2020 and other similar programs. I think that these programs have to finance other projects and other initiatives. Startups could be a little bit different from them. And there is another option, reverse the brain drain and attract more venture capitalists to create permanent offices in the region. This may sound counterintuitive. Why would we want more, let's say, US ownership in EU tech companies? But from now, the trust is that if top US venture capital funds do not come here, then our top entrepreneurs will go to them. At present, a few of the top names have permanent offices in London and even have a few European partners now, and only a few ones in Eastern and Central Europe. So basically, this is the key elements, to attract the regional startup ecosystem, and to cooperate to each other is very important, because the individual countries generally are too small for the venture capital investors, and we have to or regard the region as a common market and a separated market with mainly with same development level economically, socially. And for example, if you look at it from the startup point of view, from startup ecosystems point of view. Thank you for your attention. It would have been my initial thoughts and remarks for this subject.
Thank you much, Ray, very much. I've got one more question to you, Robert, because 5G network is quite an issue and quite a topical issue. Would you mind saying a few words about a safe 5G network? Is that possible? What does it really mean?
I understand it's a question because we do have now two Roberts on the line, and I'm wondering the question is directed towards me or Robert Koplewski.
I think to you, you are
okay.
5G.
Okay. Yeah,
I can say something, but it's not my main topic.
Sure, we published at the Institute last, I think, May, the kind of introductory report on 5G as a technology and as a kind of both enabler, but at the same time the challenge when it comes to security of this enabler. So with, as we used to say, and as the Superman used to say, with big power comes big responsibility, and this is the case especially with 5G. So the issue of how we as the think tank perceive the security of 5G, it's a little bit wider than technical components itself. Of course, the technical components are the bedrock of the security, but to understand better why it is so important to ensure it, first we start with wondering what will be the role of 5G technology in the future digital economy. And if the first generation, second generation, or even the third generation of the telecommunication technologies have been used by first 5, then 10, 15% of the population, and only for kind of recreational communication or some kind of minor business issues, we see that 5G will be a kind of enabler for a lot of not only optimization, but also creation of new market per se. So using any other technologies, as have been previously discussed, artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and so on, in combination with this kind of high connectivity that 5G will enable, we will see that in short, the 5G will be kind of, I would say, main pipeline of digital economy. And therefore, this main pipeline have to be secure first and foremost, technically, in this case, when we speak about specific communication protocols and how the infrastructure itself, because we have to remember that 5G is a little bit differently built than previous G technologies. In this case, there is a bigger role of software than in previous kind of in LTE, in 4G, and even previous G. And there also the role of the physical components, of course, is still big as historically in every of the telecommunication networks. But apart from the technical component, there is also the whole discussion about the security of the value chain when it comes to 5G. So because the system itself, the infrastructure itself is so connected, we do have this physical, we do have this software component, we do have end users, not only people, but also, as we will see, IoT and industrial IoT as the main, I would say, sector, which will be probably in the first phase using, I would say, massively 5G, for example, for Industry 4.0. And therefore, we need to be able to build a system that will secure also the kind of the whole value chain of these different components. If you ask me, because I think that was a question whether we are able to build a secure 5G network, of course, as a cybersecurity, I would say speaker, I have to say that there is no secure network, or there is no secure environment in this case when you speak about ICT. But of course, there are different levels of security that we might provide for this, in this case, 5G network. And first and foremost, building it on a trusted partners is the same like building any other important part of our, I would say, critical infrastructure or critical component of the economy. We built it with the partners that we trust. That so to say, because this technology is becoming so important in other aspects apart from the telecommunication, we need to be. It's not only a commercial offer; it's also the other aspects such as geopolitical aspects, but also the aspects of kind of what will be happening in the future with this 5G technology. We know we're already working on 6G technology, but 5G will stay here for a long. And we, as for now, for 2020, we probably don't even know what will be the, let's say, innovative ways how corporate startups and other parts of the system will be using 5G, let's say in 2050. And what will be dependent at this point in 2050 on 5G. And therefore, in the process of creating, as for now, for 2020, this network, we need to take into account also these considerations. And therefore, last but not least, from our perspective, it is important to not only think about technological components, but also about this trust for vendors that will be building this network.
All right, thank you. My next question is about opportunities that brings this infrastructure, this new infrastructures of 5G for startups. And Jerzy, would you mind saying a few words on that?
The previous speaker, Robert, mentioned something very important, that 5G is going to be an enabler for multiple technologies. And he also mentioned IoT. And I think that's the key word in this particular topic, that the main difference between 4G and 5G is not even about the speed, because 5G is 5 times faster, according to different statistics, than 4G. But what the difference is, it's about the latency. So it allows for much faster non-lagged connections and allows for multiple units, way more units of IoT, I guess, to be connected to the network. So it basically enables smart homes, smart enterprises, smart cities to fully utilize the network itself. 4G wasn't fully capable of this. 5G, it's one of its main goals is to actually enable this. So in terms of how it's going to be enabled and how startups are going to be using this, this opens up a new spectrum of interconnectivity within the mesh network, which uses different connections, but also within the GSM connection itself. So we will probably, and startups too, will become less and less reliant on cable connections, and will probably move forward to actually becoming more 5G connected. There will be way more opportunities for mobile connectivity as well than up to this point, though 5G, because of the wavelength of its wavelength is more demanding in terms of hardware as well. So it will take a bit more time to actually deploy beyond, for example, cities. So smart cities are probably going to be the first beneficiaries of this technology, because the further you go outside of a city, the harder it is to deploy 5G technology, because it requires more antennas. But for startups in particular, what the best, I would say, what the best advantage of this is that it will simply open up a whole new chapter, a whole new segment of startups to work with. And I have the pleasure of representing Cambridge Innovation Center in Warsaw. And we actually have a hub which is going to be dealing with IoT, 5G technologies, which we are working on with Łódzka Specjalna Strefa Ekonomiczna, so Łódzka Special Economic Zone, along with their 5G accelerator, Spark. So only within, and we're at the very beginning of this process. So I don't want to give you any statistics or any promises, because we've just been open for 2.5 months, and this is something that we're just commencing. We see a huge number of opportunities for these startups, and there's already a number of them within the accelerator that's going to be working with us too, to basically open up all these possibilities for smart homes, smart cities, smart utilities, smart enterprises. And in terms of how this is going to affect our economy, given the recession, or minor or larger, depending on how long the pandemic is going to last, it could be a economy booster long term, and a whole new way of actually generating potential revenue and increasing productivity and efficiency within companies, cities, and homes. So vast opportunities that come with this technology, and I think we agree with the previous speaker on that too. So, thank you.
I have one question to Jerzy and Gabor. The same question. What do you think today and in the future, after sometimes in the future, what should be the best solution on investing in startups? In your opinion, is it governmental funds, public funds should be the most important part of investing in startups, or maybe we should, and when, change this investing process and rather find private funds to invest in new startups? So it's one question. When we should change this situation? Of course, today, in general, in the CEE region, the most active investor in startups are rather public sector. But when, in your opinion, and maybe never, the situation should change, and we should from which moment we should rather start looking for money in private sector. And the second question in this area is especially to Jerzy, of course, but maybe not only. how to build a trust between startups and public sector as a client for these startups. Because in my opinion, startups are afraid a little bit public sector as a client. They are rather prefer looking for clients on the market, between private companies. But I think for startups, public sector is a much better client, because public sector rather can risk a little bit more buying some new products, new services, new equipment in this area. So how to build this trust between startups and public sector? How to learn public sector to be more offensive in buying new products from startups in this moment in the future? How to change this situation? So first, these two short questions.
Since I was speaking previously, maybe Matrai, maybe you would like to tackle this and I'll follow up.
Let's start, Jerzy. You can start, no problem.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, I think there's some stutter. Okay, so it's a complex question because there's 3 questions within that one question. So
no problem.
let me tackle one by one. So first one was, when is the best time to start investing in startups and to switch from public money, kind of public sector to VCs? I think the best time is now. There's naturally different ways. Matrai spoke about the benefits and the negatives of public sector's involvement within startups. And there's certainly a fair amount of truth in saying that there are startups, and there are startups in Poland like that too, that benefit so significantly from the public sector and the public money that their lifeline is basically the public sector, and that's how they operate, and that's their modus operandi. And certainly VCs, maybe because of the way they operate, and they're more based on a free market, I would say, ideology, expect startups to be profitable, whereas the public sector expects very often the bureaucracy to be right. And I think that's the main difference. So there's the Public Development Fund, the Polish Development Fund, PFR, has done a significant amount of work which has enabled VCs which were underfunded to get some extra money based on the subsidiary methodology to fund VCs and enable them to fund startups, enable them to basically generate more money. I think for Poland in particular, we are in kind of this bridge moment where we're moving slowly from the public sector to the private sector. It will take time for a simple reason. We don't have that many rich investors in Poland yet, because when we're comparing ourselves, for example, to Great Britain, London being the headquarters for VCs in Europe, and Silicon Valley being the headquarters for venture capital investments in the US, we're comparing ourselves to economies that have been developing for hundreds of years without any breaks. And as probably everyone in this panel realizes, we've had a very long break in terms of generating capital, and we've been only doing this for 30 years. So apart from the educational aspect, which needs to be certainly developed, and I'm happy to say again that within CIC, we have a community of investors that we're actually going to be training along with our partner Common Angels, which is the biggest network of angel investors in Poland. So this is an element of a long-term education and shift. So when is the best time to move from public to private? When there's money in private hands to be invested in public in startups, but also education, that these startups know what they're doing, these VCs know what they're doing and how they're investing the money, and also how they affect the development of startups, because this is a very important element of what VCs should be doing. Apart from just giving money, they also have to give advice, mentoring, and certain oversight over what startups are doing. So that's the first thing. And how to startups and the public sector. I think it's again a matter of time between when this is going to change. Our region of the world isn't particularly good with public and civil trust. The gap and the level of trust between the society and the public sector and the governments are fairly low. We can only aspire to Nordic countries, which have the highest levels in the world in terms of that. And I think as this trust develops, and trust is going to be one of the most important currencies of the future, I feel, especially with all the cybersecurity issues that we're going to be facing and other issues at hand, there's going to be hopefully a change where the society itself is going to be slowly trusting the government more and more. But there also needs to be a reason for it to trust the government. So I think the work is not only supposed to be done on the side of startups, where they one thing they see whenever they think of working with the public sector is bureaucracy, administration, and a lot of paperwork to be filled in. And that does not exactly fit the agile model of what startups are used to. And so that's one thing that needs to be addressed. And on the other hand, the public sector needs to also kind of reach out to the startup industry, to the startup ecosystem, and find ways to cooperate with them and understand them and understand their agility and their needs. I think a good example of the Polish government slowly doing this is the GovTech initiative that is being developed by the Chancellery of the Prime Minister. And I think the ideas that they have, and actually the Polish GovTech organization has been awarded numerous times for its initiatives, among others, a marketplace which will allow, I think it could be already deployed, which will allow local governments and state governments to look for startups and software house subcontractors through a marketplace that is being built online. So except not, in a way of not doing this via paper, you'll be able to find a potential client. A startup or a software house is going to be able to find a potential client in the public sector through a marketplace. So that's one example of how you can bring the public sector to the startup ecosystem closer. I'm certain there are others, so maybe Matrai, you can share those with us.
Yes, thank you. Just a few comments. First of all, I would come back, the building a startup ecosystem. The startup ecosystem building is not only about the private equity fund, venture capital funds, or public funding. It's about the acceleration, it's about the incubation, it's about angel investors, and so on and so on. But let's step back another or two steps. This is, what is the definition of a startup? It's always a real question mark. What does it mean, startup? In my view, or in our view, the startups mean, or we can characterize startups or define startups with three topics. One is it has to be a kind of innovation in the operation, in the activity of this entrepreneurship. The second is the product, services, or application which is developed by the startup or which are developed by the startups could be sold in all over the world, not only in a given country. And the third is there is a tremendous growth opportunity or option within this entrepreneurship. These are the so-called three elements, to define some things to a startup, not a let's say, beginning of a new operation or new entrepreneurship. That's one thing. The other thing is that I have an experience working with Hungarian American Enterprise Fund, which was the the fellow organization of the Polish American Enterprise Fund, which was established by the US government to promote the investments in the region, you know, Bulgarian American Enterprise Fund, Polish American Enterprise Fund, Hungarian American Enterprise Fund, and the Romanian one. It was financed by the US government in a US aid program. So I have some experience, you know, to have this so-called government financing, but not the national government, you know, the US government. And I also worked for First Hungary Fund, which was a private equity fund funded by pension funds and other private investors. The difference could be recognized, because if you look at the government financed enterprise fund, you know, the return requirement is a little bit different than if you worked for a private equity fund. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know exactly the definition from this aspect. In the region, there are enterprise fund or private equity funds or investment funds who are financed by EU money and by the government. You know, in Hungary, I can tell you that the real problem is with the startup ecosystem is that the largest investor now in VC is the Hungarian or government-based or government-funded development bank. And this creates a real problem for the private investors. On the other hand, this is not only the excess of the money and the return requirements. This is a problem to generate the deal flow and what is the pipeline of the investment funds. You know, because as I mentioned beforehand, this national markets are too small. So if you start to raise some competition for an investment, it's very difficult, you know, to invest with an investor or with a fund or private equity who has more flexible investment terms and conditions. And return on investment criteria is a little bit different than the investment criteria of a real private equity fund. So therefore, I would say I agree with Jerzy. It's very important to have right now the private investors, or it's a little bit, let's say, not today, yesterday. Have to be more agile and more attractive, you know, in the market, these investments. And I would like to repeat myself again. We have to combine our resources, efforts, and to create regional operation. If you look at the private equity funds, it was mentioned by Joe as well. It's a special one, you know, the infrastructure fund. Concentrate on the region, not only in one country. This is a very important one, not only from deal flow generation point of view, as I mentioned. It's only an important issue for market access point of view. And of course, you know, to growth, as I mentioned also, you know, this tremendous growth opportunity in the startups, the growth opportunity could be step by step. First growth opportunity is in the region. The second opportunity is in Europe, and the third opportunity in the world. And I think that if we follow this strategy to combine our resources, efforts, and knowledge, of course, and expertise together in the region and establish an ecosystem, not only in an individual country, instead of that in the Central Eastern Europe, let's say larger Central Eastern Europe, that would be one of the key success elements. Back to the trust. Trust is an important issue in all over the world, you know, not only in connection and in all areas, not only with the so-called investments and venture capital and startup arena. To build trust is one of the key elements of is to be honest, to be honest and keep all the rules, not the over administrative rules, you know, the rules which are laid down by the participants and the government. And if you are in line with these rules and keep these rules, it's one of the main elements of the trust. The other is, what is the outcome and result of the development and innovation, and how you can use this development innovation for the benefit of the society, for the benefit of the welfare of the private individuals, and the benefit for the economy. And this is one of the most important things, and one of the main elements as well, the communication. Communication is a very important issue. Not to keep, you know, the real new innovative things in a bubble. To communicate what is the benefit, what is the next steps, how you can be successful, how you can create value for the society and for the economy. This is again an element of being or establish, you know, a well-trusted operation, well-trusted ecosystem. These are my let's say final remarks and closing remarks to this subject, and I would again emphasize, you know, this cooperation, which is supported by this very valuable CEE Digital Summit as well. And another important thing here, the how we can establish a vital ecosystem. Here, or NTA established or put together a digital startup strategy for the Hungarian government, how they can boost, you know, the ecosystem and establish an ecosystem and develop an ecosystem. And if we have it, I would like to offer to you and share with you how can we change our knowledge and expertise on this subject as well, and for remark, of course. Thank you very much.
Anna, you wanted to
Yes, colleagues, do you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Good. Thank you very much. So I really have listened to the whole discussion with a very big fascination. I guess I have something to add here, also contributing the experience of 6 countries, not only representing Belarus here, 6 countries of Eastern Partnership, so the countries that are bordering the European Union from the east currently. So what we have observed even during our discussion is that we talk about innovations, we talk about digital innovations, but what we observe is the big gap between the understanding of digital technologies and innovation ecosystems. So we feel that there are 2 different worlds currently developing, and in my opinion, this is the main reason why there is the lack of trust between digital startups and digital scale-ups and the public sector. So the suggestion from my side to build up this trust, additionally to what has been proposed by Jerzy and Gabor, is to develop the expert communities. So the expert communities are the thematical communities of those people who possess some specific thematical expertise. And of course, there can be different modes of their realization, different modes of certification or approval of the expertise. It doesn't matter so far. So what is most important is that these expert communities need to be visible, they need to be open, so that it is possible to join to these communities by people from different regions. And these expert communities would empower both the startups and would serve to the public sector as the means to support, to validate some startup or scale-up idea. So this is one thing, the establishment of the expert communities within the region, so that they would be visible not only within one country, but in the region generally. The second thing is that well, I would like to fully support what has been suggested by Gabor related to ecosystem development, because as we see, finding appropriate money for establishment of a startup is only the beginning of the story. So what I'm also communicating a lot with the digital startups, and as both in the IT Association InfoPark, which I'm currently representing, and in the other projects. So what we see is that the startups need this access to expert communities for them to validate the idea and to move it forward, but also they need the testing opportunities. So they need the what's it called, lead users, from the Eric von Hippel concept, those who can test their solutions and before they propose it to the global market. And this testing of solutions would mean that we can also start building such communities of potential users. And for digital technologies, this is already an issue. You cannot just pick up a person from the street and say, look, I have developed some cool thing, please test it, right? So if we talk about the blockchain, if we talk about the AI solutions, if we talk about cybersecurity, it means that the pilot users should have some basic competence and a rather good competence in order to validate the idea. So this is another thing. The third thing is access to market, and actually the testing of the prototype on the market is a next stage of the startup development. And that means that some market needs to allow for such testing for innovative solutions. And at this point, I would like to recall to my suggestion for you to consider the cooperation not only within the Central Europe, but also wider with the Eastern region, Eastern Partnership region, because this region, these 6 countries, they have, of course, some need for advancement in ecosystem development, but on the other hand, they have the good opportunities. Their disadvantages are that the ecosystem is not so fairly developed. There are not so many accelerators and incubators comparing to the amount of ideas and startups. On the other hand, their regulation of digital technologies is not so sophisticated as in the European Union so far. For example, we don't have GDPR in some countries, right? So that means that if you wanted to test some idea, the Eastern Partnership Europe is exactly what you can look for in order to proceed. And here we can talk about the wide variety of technologies, and one of the areas which I could propose strategically is the digital transformation of industries. I'm not sure if I will be able now to. No, I'm not able to share with you my screen, but I will send you just a link to the chat, which you can use and look in more detail. So what I'm talking about is the big work that is currently done with the support of the European Commission in the region to harmonize digital markets with Eastern Partnership. There are different directions, including cybersecurity, including telecom rules and e-health and different other areas. And actually in this initiative, I'm leading the stream which is devoted to the development of ICT innovation ecosystem. So the link that I have shared with you, it leads you to the action plans that we have developed for 6 countries each of them devoted to a particular topic that was selected as a priority topic by the country. And I really inspire you to open at least the action plans, because this will show you the scope of activities that need to be implemented for development of ecosystem for digital innovations generally. And quite many things that are proposed there, they are not existing in many countries of the European Union. So we have developed action plans based on the study of best EU practices. So the comparison is not with an average level, but with the top level of European Union. And you will probably see many opportunities for cooperation with the region, or many inspiring ideas for joint projects. And what is most important, you will see the references to the stakeholders in these partnership countries, because we have validated all these action plans with the local stakeholders, and the organizations that are mentioned in the action plans, that they are proposed by the countries as those who can who want to proceed to implement these actions. So we have the database and access to 800 organizations in Eastern Partnership region that consisted of the ecosystem for ICT innovation. And so I'm inspiring you to look closer at the topic of digitizing industry, which is one of the mainstream topics for cooperation in the region, in my opinion, and also to check the topic on access to finance, because it also addresses the questions that have been raised by Michal. The questions about what is the proper time for taking up the private funds. This is already happening. So this is happening through development of crowdfunding platforms and making them available for digital innovations. This is already happening by development of peer-to-peer lending, and the business angels and the venture capitalists are also increasingly inspired to take up the digital innovations. But what is the problem? The problem is that all these financial chains, financial links of the chain, are not so well connected with each other. And obviously, if we don't want to have many startups in the countries. That's not the goal, right? The goal is to have the companies that develop into the bigger companies and that start to pay taxes to the local budget, to the national budget, and invest into the national social infrastructure, right? So we want the companies to grow. We want them to continue to grow within our countries. We want them still to be connected to the global market. So the in my opinion, what has to be the only opportunity for the Europe as the big region to survive in competition with USA and China is to make it together, to develop the ecosystem for digital innovation that will be well connected, both in terms of raising the ideas and in terms of connecting the expert communities, and in terms of connecting the markets for testing the ideas, and in terms of connecting financial opportunities for different types of digital innovations. So that's it so far. I will gladly stay in contact with any of you for further discussions, and we can.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for this valuable inputs and final remarks, because we are finishing right now today's meeting. So thank you so much for being with us, and see you probably soon.